I'm Layla Saad, and my life is driven by one burning question. How can I become a good ancestor? How can I create a legacy of healing and liberation for those who are here in this lifetime and those who will come after I'm gone? In my pursuit to answer this question, I'm interviewing changemakers and culture shapers who are also exploring that question for themselves in the way that they live and lead their life. It's my intention that these conversations will help you find your own answers to that question too. Welcome to Good Ancestor Podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Good Ancestor Podcast. Today, I'm speaking with somebody I'm really excited to be in conversation with. I've been a huge fan of her work since her very first single. My daughter is a huge fan of her work. Her song Barbarian is constantly played in our house and in our car. And so this is such a pleasure for me to have her here. I'm talking about Mona Haydar. Mona is a Flint, Michigan-raised Syrian-American daughter of immigrants who is a rapper, a chaplain, a poet, and an MA in Christian ethics. Billboard Magazine named Mona Haydar's breakout hit Hijabi one of 2017's best protest songs and one of the top feminist anthems of all time. Her Ask a Muslim project, created in the wake of the Paris and San Bernardino terrorist attacks, garnered international attention and extensive press. The project was featured on the series The Secret Life of Muslims, and it remains the most watched episode of the series. As an MA student, Mona's worked as a chaplain at NYU, and she studied post-colonial theology. Fresh off the success of her debut EP, Barbarian, and armed with an MA from Union Theological Seminar in New York City, Mona Haydar comes here today to discuss her music, her spiritual path, and the power of art. Welcome to the show, Mona.
For having me, Layla. I'm so excited to be here with you.
And who is our guest?
She's very new to our family. Her name is Amar, so she might be making little appearances here and there.
We love. I'm a cat person. I'm not a dog person. I'm a cat person. So she's very welcome here. Mona, I'm going to start with our very first question, which is around ancestors. Who are some of the ancestors, living or transitioned, societal or familial, who have influenced you on your journey?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the prophetic path is a big part of my life. Those who speak the truth, no matter what tradition they come from, no matter what geographical location they come from. So I'm very influenced by, archetypes like Mary and Jesus. And of course, there are more recent people, but for me, it's not like a coincidence that those people's names are just repeated throughout history and throughout the world and the universe. And, like the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, his name was mentioned in the space beyond time, beyond space. And like, for me, that's that's pretty dope. Talk about a good ancestor. You did in a thought of God before time and space. But of course, like I live in New Mexico, and so for me, the indigenous population of this land specifically really speaks to me and my heart and my goals in life, because understanding myself as a colonized body, working on decolonizing this body and this mind, people like Black Elk, and just like the women out here in the world who have been nameless for so long, who do the work of struggling against, the corruption of man that seeks to extract and destroy the earth. So, I mean, like I could sit here and rattle off names, but for me, often like it's the people who are most forgotten, who I'm just like, like I'm one of those people who talks to the planet, who talks to the earth. Like it's a part of me, it's a part of us. and thanking the earth for those nameless people and beings who made it so that I could be here in the consciousness and in the way that I am in relationship with this planet. So, I could rattle off the names like, like I was fangirling Alice Walker,
Mm-hmm.
like I got to speak at a conference at a film festival with her, and like, what? Like, what? So of course there's stuff like that, but yeah, I mean, just like honoring all of the women who fought so hard throughout all of the centuries and destinies so that we could be here doing this work.
Mm. I love that you've started us there, because I think we can, in this day and age, get so enamored with the people who have the bigger names and the more well-known public images that we forget that this work of lineage and passing down lessons does not have to be this big affair, right? And that oftentimes those who are passing down the lessons that are so important to us, a lot of times, didn't necessarily become the sort of more well-known names, and yet their work was just as important. That really resonates with me as I think about my own lineage and sort of like my grandparents and great grandparents, like the work that they did. My grandmother comes into my dreams often.
Wow.
My maternal grandmother, often she's in my dreams. And, she's not some big celebrity out there somewhere. She's my grandmother, right? But she, in our family, was that presence for us. She meant so much to us, and the way that she was, her sense of being, and the things that she did, and the lessons that she instilled, spread out to all of us, her children, me, and my cousins, and that means a lot to me that you said that.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like our grandmothers, a lot of them will never go down in history, but they're these badass women who, like my maternal grandmother, Suad Naqshbandi, she she got out of a bad marriage with an abusive husband, and took her children from that marriage, and like found her life and was a midwife in Damascus, Syria. Ended up marrying this much older man who was like in her neighborhood, who was an artist and like the first filmmaker in Damascus, and kind of like made her life over.
Yeah,
And we're talking about like the 20s and 30s and 40s
right.
and 50s, and like this is the Middle East, this is the Levant, where like you want to talk about every stereotype of women. Well, like that was the whole world back then. You couldn't do anything without a man, no matter if you were in Scandinavia or wherever,
Right.
and like she's never going to go down in history, but here she was, like, fighting for her life and making the life that she wanted. And I just respect that so much. And like I wouldn't be here if not for her choices, her choices to decide to leave an abusive relationship, her choices to like make a good life for her children that she had and the children that she would have. And like she wouldn't settle, you know what I mean? Like
Mm,
she wouldn't like just be like, "Oh, this is my life." You
right.
know? She decided, "No, like my life gets to be what I want it to be," even though it was hard and challenging, even though the community didn't support her and look down on her for it. And like for me, that's a good ancestor. you
Right.
know, breaking those cycles. Like you can sit here and name drop all day long, but it's those people who put in the hard work in the mundane reality of the world, breaking cycles, breaking toxicity, and disrupting negative cycles, and saying, you know what, I'm gonna do a better version of what I see out here, and I'm gonna try my hardest to be a better reflection of what a human can be for my children and
Right.
my pride, and so that I can be a good ancestor, like, yeah, grandmothers, man, like that's huge. I think about my grandmothers all the time. Like, I have this, my other grandmother, she was a huge, like, she was just a hard ass. She was like the only woman in her community, in her neighborhood, who could read and write. And so she
Mm.
would have this gathering in her house, um, literally teaching women to read, by teaching them Quran. And they would just
Mm.
house, and she would teach these illiterate women to read. And she had, I don't know, 11 children or something. I think it was 11. I always forget that number. But and many of her children died, and like what that means for you know what that means for a woman when you have children who pass away before you, and what that
Right.
is. And like, yeah, our grandmothers, man, like that's everything.
I love that so much, Mona. And I see in you somebody who is uh, fighting and for her life, for the life that she wants to create in her truth. You are to so many different people who are, and it's sort of their brains get a bit scrambled because they want to put you in a box, right? Oh, wait a minute, she's American, but she's Syrian, but she's a poet, but she's a chaplain, but she studied Christian ethics, and I can't really, she's a hijabi and she raps like I'm what?
I know, I have a hard time keeping up with it all, honestly.
but
I'm confused.
what I appreciate you so much, because I myself, in other different ways, sit at these different intersections of identities and experiences, and for so much of my life felt like I'm so confusing for other people to have to deal with. Like, it's so hard for me to explain to other people who I am, where I come from, why I have this experience, but also this experience, and I do this, but I do that. And it means so much to me when I see a woman like you who is living all of those things simultaneously and saying, you will not cut off a part of me to make it easier for you to understand me. I am all of these things at the same time. And it upsets me that is so radical, such a radical revolutionary notion. But the fact is that it still is. What has been your what are some of the things that you've had to work through to get to that place of this is all of who I am?
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, it's not easy, breaking out of the norm. Like, even just growing up, knowing that you're different from your friends and you have different goals and aspirations. Like, uh, I was always like the weird kid who liked the weird shoes, and I wasn't in the Skechers, and I didn't have the JanSport backpack or whatever. And it wasn't like, there wasn't like I don't know, there wasn't always like a big reason for it. It was just because, like, in a lot of ways I couldn't care less. And in other ways I cared so much,
Right.
I just cared about other things. And I I feel like I have to give credit to my mother. Like, she moved from Damascus, Syria, not speaking English, and she just had this like tenacity that she was just going to go out and learn this language and this country, and she was going to make it work for her. And even if it didn't want to work for her, she was going to make it work.
Right.
And yeah, she just broke out of the norm. Like, she wasn't your typical like Syrian housewife. Like, she had 8 children, and then her eldest was in college, and she was like, you know what, I'm gonna enroll in college. And she did. And every time my mom was like, okay, slow down, like, you're doing too much, you're being too extra, like, chill a little bit with the lipstick and the blah blah, and and I'm just like, well, it's your fault. Like, like in Arabic we say terbaitek, like, you raised me, like, the way that you raised me.
Right.
And like, I really am somebody who believes that if your heart is on the path to God and you really are truly trying your best to be kind and loving and generous, like of course you make mistakes, and of course you slip up, and of course you're ignorant of certain truths and realities. But like if you're out here trying your best all the time, like God just has a way of opening the world for you, even when it's challenging and hard, and that even the things that appear to be challenges in your life ultimately end up being gifts and mercies that show you like what needs to be your priorities and what needs to not be, and what needs to like get a move on in your life, you know?
Mm,
I just really, it's for me, it's about perspective. Like, you know, like this little kitty, you know, she's beautiful and she has these interesting markings. Here, I'll show you. Like, she has, you know, like kind of tiger stripes. Like, is she
mm,
is she black? Is she, you know, caramel? Like she has all of that. You wouldn't identify her as one or the other. She's complex, and you know, she's committed to who she is, being complex. You know, she's not
yeah.
gonna call herself a striped kitty or a salad kitty. She's just out here like living her best life kittying, you know?
Right, right.
And like we get really caught up in identifications and identity politics, and I feel like that's important to a certain degree, and then at a certain point that falls away and you realize like, oh, actually I'm earth, and that is my most important identity. I am an ancestor, and that is my most important identity. I am, you know, on my way to becoming,
Yeah.
that is my identity. And you know, identity is this like super complex thing that we could talk about forever. But I struggle, you know. It's not easy to break out. Like nobody in the community that I grew up in is doing anything like what I'm doing.
I don't
And
know anybody doing what you're doing, right? I mean, I could probably name, other, women Muslim rappers, for example, or musicians, but not who are chaplains who've studied Christian ethics.
yeah,
Um, you know, you are so unique. Each one of us is. But I can imagine that being being in the position that you are in and continuing to sort of do your work and gain more more people becoming aware of you and your work, right? There's a lot of pressure that comes with that, with people wanting you to conform either way to their ideas of who you think they should be, right? So you have, people who are, you know heavily hold that white supremacist ideology, who are viewing you through a certain lens. And then you have people from your own community, other Muslims, um, who also view you through their own lens of how and who they think you should be. You have it coming at both directions at the same time. That's a lot to cope with. I remember at one point, I think it was earlier this year, we had a conversation, and you'd said that you had unfollowed everyone on social media because you needed to for your own mental well-being. There's a lot that comes with doing this work and being in this position.
yeah. I mean, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I there is a lot of pressure, and you know, people look at me and they want to like put me in one box or another. Like I'm just a Muslim woman, and I'm just a chaplain, or I'm just a musician. And you know, um it's hard for people to even like have compassion with themselves, with their own
Right.
complexity, let alone have compassion and like try to understand someone else's complexity. So you know, for me, like, it's about being gentle. It's about being, like, super gentle with yourself and with the world, because, like, everybody's out here hurting and struggling. And, like, you know, I got a message last night from somebody who had seen me perform recently, and they were talking about their suicidal tendencies and such. And it just put me in this state of heart, in this state of mind that, like, Man, like you just really never know what people are going through. Like I've had my own bouts of depression. You know, I've experienced postpartum depression, and I think those kinds of things come into my life. At least I don't know about other people, but they come into my life, and they make me softer, not harder.
Mm,
You know, they make me softer for myself. And they make me softer and more tender towards everybody else. And um, yeah, like, and I believe like like people often want to feel like we're in competition with one another, and the softer and more tender I get, the less competitive I feel, and the less I want to compete, and the less, um, like I just don't have that angst anymore that I need to be better or prettier or whatever.
right.
Like, I just really believe that there's space for all of us doing our unique work, and that God is going to put you in the perfect place for you to attain your own brand of enlightenment, your own, if you want it, if
Yeah.
you try for it. The divine is kind and loving and generous. And, like if we're open, our complexities come in clutch. That's actually what allows you to arrive at your own beautiful enlightenment, and for me, like that's what our identities are for. They're for
Mm,
allowing us to arrive at a more beautiful place, um individually and collectively.
yeah.
um yeah.
It's really interesting. I actually heard about you and your work through Mirabai Star. I was in an online program of hers that was about the divine feminine, and it was, I was exploring different things on my path and sort of trying to understand what is it for me when I express my faith. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And how I wanted to nurture my relationship with Allah. And I was in this program, and I can't even remember what we were talking about, but it was, I think, one of she was looking at different known sort of archetypes or role models, and one of them was Muslim. And which is why I wanted to do the program, because she was looking at it from all these different sort of interfaith perspectives. And in it, she mentioned you and your work and said that, Mona Haydar, someone I really look up to. She's a close friend of mine. She does this work. And I was like, I don't know who this is. I'm going to go Google her. Because I was the only Muslim in that program. So I was like, I want to know who this other Muslim lady is that she's talking about. And I came across your work, and I think at the time, I'm not sure actually if your first single had come out, Wrap My Hijab, Hijabi, Wrap My Hijab. I don't know if it had come out yet, but I, had come across the work that you had done with the Ask a Muslim with your husband. And I was like, I like her. I really like her. And as I got to know your music and hear your music, it just was so, like every single, we're always like, Mona Haydar has a new song out. Let's go watch the video, Each one delivers its own message, and um, you're so, what I respect so much about you is you're so clear I am a Muslim. I'm not a watered down version of a Muslim. I am a Muslim woman, and I'm going to point that out. I'm going to point this out. I'm going to look at that. I'm not going to be afraid of sort of sitting with the complexity of everything. And I think that the reason I'm talking about this is that thing that you just said about people are not willing to be compassionate with themselves. I see that so much, and people are not willing to sit with their own complexities within themselves. And so when they see it in someone else, it's like, what is she doing? She's not
Right.
allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Right? She's not allowed to do that because I don't give myself permission to do that or to be that.
Yeah.
And I have the same way become a lot softer and more tender as I allow myself to be this complex human being. If I allow myself to see my full humanity, of course I have to see everyone else's humanity then. as well. It can't just be me out here. Like, yeah, I'm a whole human being, but all of you guys, you all have work to do, right?
Right.
Right? And that's right. And that's the direction that in my own personal work, which will then filter out into how I do my work out in the world, is really heading into, is really being able to be with the complexity of being a human being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, like, lady, that is the work right there. Just like allowing yourself to be free.
Right.
And free, like, I don't believe that freedom lacks discipline. You know what I mean? Freedom and liberation are the most disciplined
Yes.
undertakings
Right.
that,
Can
because
you
they,
speak on that? Speak on that. I think I know what you're saying, but I want to make sure our listeners know what you're saying.
like, I'm not talking about the kind of freedom and liberation that just means like you just go out and do whatever you want and F everybody else and, YOLO or whatever. Like, that's cheap. That is selfish. That is not that's not self-care, because self-care is a realization that you are an integral part of a collective, of an intergalactic collective,
Mhm.
um, a universal, cosmic collective that is divine and sacred. And when you just see you and you're just out here for you, like that, that's small, that's cheap. Like when you tap into the network and you realize how held you are, like that's why the concept of having ancestors is so powerful, because you realize you're actually part of a huge network that is holding you,
Right.
that is caring for you, that is loving you into your best self, into your best existence. And like for me, like I pray 5 times a day, and it's hard for me. It's not like a beautiful, sublime experience every time I go and I wash and I stand and I pray and I like, it takes time, it takes effort, and it's not, oh, you're gonna drop the laptop. It's not easy. And I just really believe that, like having, like for instance, having children, having pets, having a career that you're dedicated to, like those things are challenging. They take
Right.
dedication. They take discipline. Having, like, for people who practice a martial arts, or people who, like even women who pole dance, or people who pole dance, like how disciplined you have to be, how like your body has to be in a particular you have to
Right.
be in shape, you have to be fit, and that level of discipline is difficult. But once you master the basics, you're allowed to be free. You're allowed to like freestyle, and cultivate true mastery, and like growing deep roots allow you to branch out and to grow and be free and liberated. But if you don't have those firm and deep roots, and you don't have that discipline that's holding you down, you're going to fly away, and you're going to get lost, and you're not going to be on the path that you're meant to be on. You're not going to be on the path that is meant for you, because you just got caught up in this person's breeze and this person,
Right.
and this trend and that trend. And I feel like social media, I feel like, is a really good representation of that.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just such a good representation of that, because it's just this trend, that trend, the next thing, the next influencer, the next brand,
Right.
the next challenge, whatever. And you could get caught up and swept up, and you could burn your entire life on that stuff that doesn't actually give you any purpose or meaning. And drive you into something deeper and bigger. Talking about that network and that collective struggle for liberation. So I feel like when you have those deep roots, whatever the deep roots are,
What do the deep roots mean for you? I know what they are for me. What are they for you?
I think it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
I think, like, my spiritual tradition and transmission, my teachers, my own discipline and dedication to my work,
Mm.
looking at what's up for me, figuring out how I'm doing good, how I'm not doing good, like staying really grounded in the earth of being, in the earth of being earth, in the earth of being so humble and
Yeah.
small. And for me, I believe that that's what makes you big. You know, I'm just somebody who believes that the more of that work you do, the freer you can be and the more beautiful you can be. Sheikh Ahmed Ubamba, he's a scholar, and a revolutionary, an African revolutionary and scholar. He said, like, um, if you cultivate inner beauty, hold on, let me look for it. Give me one second. I don't want to get, let me look.
Because it already sounds very beautiful. While you're looking, I'll talk about what some of my roots are for me.
Yeah, tell me.
So I love that you've talked about the discipline. My mentor, Dr. Frantonia, who I've interviewed on the show and talk about nearly every episode, one of the things that she says, which really has stuck with me, is that sovereignty requires responsibility.
Yes.
And that you can't just, yes, we are all worthy of, we are all worthy in our inherent being, first of all, and we are all deserving of sovereignty, and it takes responsibility. It means having to take complete and total responsibility for every aspect of your life, your choices, your habits, the things that you think and do, the discipline, the dedication, the commitment, all of that. And that's not, it's not for, like you said it's cheap to just want freedom without any sense of responsibility or commitment or discipline. And so one of the things that is important for me is my continuing mentoring sessions, to have somebody who is an elder, has walked her path and is walking her path, and who is able to help me, guide me, walk alongside me as I walk my own path, keeping me accountable to being the best version of myself and the me that I want to be in the world, right? That's really important for me to continue. She's always on my ass. Like, she's like, every session is pretty intense, right? So, but I'll be working with her for a long time to come, because
That's a good mentor, though.
She really is, right? There is no comfort zone. We're always on the edge, right? On the edge. But she does so in a very loving and compassionate way. My spiritual practice as well, my faith, Islam, and so many of the things that you've spoken about so far, I smiled inside when you spoke about them, because I've gotten through really hard times by coming back to those Islamic spiritual principles. And I've been able to grow through heartache, betrayal, people being very, very harsh with me, and not turning around and wanting to attack, and not wanting to turn around and get revenge or wanting harm to come upon them, because that goes at odds with my Islamic faith. And so my faith, my values, and then the important relationships in my life, my husband, my children, my parents, my close network of friends who keep me grounded, who are, just beautiful, strong women, who are on their path as well, and who remind me to be both tender and fierce. That this practice of, for me, and this is a lot of what I've learned through my mentoring work as well, for me, it's about, I can't be I can't be this martyr and this savior for other people. Like, I have to fill myself up first, and then everybody else gets what comes from the overflow. Because if I do it any other way, and I have done it other ways, it's not sustainable. And I end up burnt out, and I end up resentful, and then I end up doing harm because I was running on empty.
Yeah.
So this practice of continuously filling myself up with pleasure, with joy, with time, with rest, with what I need, everyone else gets the benefit of that. You know, those are my roots. So did you find the quote?
I did. I mean, I just wanted to speak to your running on empty thing. Like, I feel like as women, specifically women in this world, and coming from cultures like we do, you're taught, you're socialized that that's how you're meant to be.
Right.
That's what makes you a good woman.
Right.
You know, you're a good mother and a good wife if you give all of everything of all of you and die for your family.
Right. Right.
You know, like
Right.
if you die for your family, like, no, I want to live for my kids.
That's right.
Die for them. I want to live for them. I want to be alive for them, celebrate their wins, that, you know, nurse their wounds and like be there for them. And I can't do that if I'm dead. You know, like
Right.
whether I'm physically dead or whether I'm dead on the inside.
Right.
Like,
Just checked out, you know?
dude, I see so many of the first generation women who immigrated to America who are just like on, you know, meds to make them feel alive because they're dead on the inside because they gave everything and now their kids are gone, their kids have their own kids, and now they feel like they have nothing.
Right.
And no one, and they never cultivated hobbies, they never cultivated joy, they never cultivated like, what do they like to do, who are they?
Right.
You know, I just see that, and it's such a huge wound in the immigrant community in this country, in the U.S. and I think in other places as well. But
Yeah.
I'm just out here like I wanna be alive to witness the revolution.
Right. And that's such a privilege that we have, right? As first generation children of immigrants that our parents did not have. You know, I have conversations now with my mother a lot around the work that I do and what it was like for her and my dad as immigrants to the UK, and some of the things where they just had to be like, yeah, we see it happening, but we can't say anything or do anything because we are trying to build this life. We are trying to create this life. And I see, and I'm grateful that I'm able to witness it, this level of freedom now that I see that my mother has, and this level of that, yes, everything that she does is still for her children because that's just who she is. And at the same time, like, she's out here like traveling, she's out here like building her own little empire, like she's out here, you know, we took them out for dinner the other day and we picked them up and I was like, are you guys aging in reverse? Because you look so cute the way the way they were dressed, and they are just really coming into their own at this time, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I lost you for a second there.
yeah.
Right?
So,
you said to your parents, are you guys aging?
right. They're aging. They seem to be aging in reverse because they're out there with their like trendy outfits, you know, they're looking young. And that was not my experience growing up with them. They were really.
My mom was an old lady.
Right.
She was an old lady when she was in her 30s and 40s.
Right.
She
right.
acted like an old lady. And now she's out here like inviting my friends out to yoga. I'm like,
okay.
what are you doing, Mama? I love it. I really, I'm so like, you know, and I do see that it's a privilege, and recognize that they had to put in a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Us to be able to be free and to
right.
do what we wanted to do and to have choices and options, you know.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think I would be the woman I am if it were not for my mother putting in that hard work of breaking tradition, of like
right.
being like, I don't care that none of y'all other women are going to college. I'm going to go to college. I don't care if y'all judge me because I have small children and I'm out here, you know, founding a school and doing whatever. Like, I'm going to have a job, you know, like it is hard, and you do, you know, you eat shit sometimes, and you have to,
right.
you know, but it means that the next person doesn't have to.
Right.
But I think the difference is, or the balance is that you know how much shit you can eat. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you gotta take on too much, you know, and you feel like you have to be the single person
Right.
to die for the cause and to struggle. Like, no, this is about community building. This is about working together to
Right.
attain collaboration. And that if one of us is out here thinking that we're the Messiah and that we can do it single-handedly, we don't really understand what liberation is,
That's right.
like, because it's all of us.
Yeah.
It is all of us.
Yes. Can I just speak to, this is so important what you're saying right now, because we're having this conversation. So I am an author and a speaker and a teacher, and I do this work called Me and White Supremacy, right? You are for now, and I'm sure there will be even more things to come, right? And you are this amazing poet, rapper, chaplain, like activist, like out here doing all of these different things as well, really using art as a way to, I see it, for me, this is how I receive it. Your art educates, it inspires, it protests, it challenges, like it calls forth, it calls out, it calls in, it's doing all of these different things. And I love that you are here doing this work, because we need all of us doing it all in our own unique way, that there is not one way and there is not one form, there is not one channel through it that it must be done through, that it needs everyone using their skills, their creativity, their imagination, their passion, their artistry to put forth, this is my medicine that I'm offering here.
I tell my students all the time, like, the world needs you. Like, you were born into this time, into this place, because the world needs your specific brand, your specific medicine, your specific whatever it is. You have a job, you have a purpose, you are here for a reason. Now find out what that is and do it, because when you do that, when you be from that place of love, from that place of like divine purpose, like, some people are like, oh, you'll never do a day of work in your life. No. Everything becomes the work.
Right.
Separate from it.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people burn out because they're not pouring from a place of deep roots. They burn up and burn out because they're pouring from a shallow place, and I've been there 100 times, 1,000,000 times, where I'm just pouring out and I'm forgetting that, like, oh damn, like, I didn't do what I know feeds me and sustains me and fills me up and brings me joy and allows me to be this divinely purposeful being in the world, and, like, I don't know, like, I'm just at a place in my life right now where, like, there's this hadith of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he says that it's actually a hadith Qudsi, where God is speaking on his tongue, and he says that, there comes a time when God will become the eyes by which you see, and the ears by which you hear, and the hand by which you do, and the feet by which you walk. And when you come to God walking, God comes to you running. Like,
if you extend this much, he extends that much, right? Yeah.
And that is not a verbatim quote, by the way. That is a poetic rendering, but for the most part,
my vague one wasn't either. So.
Bad Muslim right here. My friend had a T-shirt that said, like, the most mediocre Muslim or something like that. But for me, it's the spirit of it, that God, that the part that I just said, that God becomes the eyes by which you see, that is verbatim. The ears by which, the hands by which you do, like, everything becomes an extension of the excellence and the purpose and the goodness that you pour out from from being your most authentic self, from doing what you're here to do on this planet at this time.
Yeah.
And that when we're all doing that, when we all are operating at that level, doing our best in our little corners, healing our trauma, looking at all our garbage that we have to deal with, and when we're all in the work of doing that, like, we will live in that more beautiful world, you
Yeah.
know? When we're all just like in our little corners doing that, doing our best, like the world will be more beautiful. But the problem is, one of the problems is, I should say, is that we have people truly believing that their brand of righteousness, their brand of dogma, their brand of whatever ideology it is the only, is
Right.
the, and it's like, no, like God could have made just one religion. God could have made just like one ideology. And like, there's a reason for the complexity. There's a reason for the diversity. And that diversity is meant to be celebrated. It's meant to be honored and loved, because it's what creates this beautiful intricate world that we're
Yeah.
all a part of. And that's beautiful. And
Yeah.
that's important, you know?
Yeah.
It's not, we're not out here trying to like become one culture,
Right.
one tradition, one way. Like, that's not right, you
Yeah.
know? God could have did that, but that's not where we're at. That's not the reality of the universe. Just like look outside and see all the different kinds of trees, all the different kinds of bugs, all the different kinds of birds. You know, like there's not one kind of bird, there's not one kind of cat, there's not one kind of tree, there's not one kind of leaf, one kind of plant, one kind of dirt.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
There's, biodiversity should just like offer us a glimpse at the fact that it's all good if we're all in our lanes doing our best.
Right. This brings me on to my next question, which I'm sure is a question you get a lot. You know, the question of what made you decide to study Christian ethics?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, growing up in the US, well, I just want to go back for a second. You know, I had said like, when you're being your best, like, imagine if an oak tree was out here trying to be a pine tree.
Right.
You know, imagine if a cat was out here trying to be a dog.
Right.
You know, like we live in that world.
Right. We do. Yeah, we do.
You know, and this isn't to judge people on their journeys. It's just to say that like we live in a world where white supremacy is the religion of the day. It is the opioid of the masses, the opium of the masses. And we've bought into it, you know, and that takes me perfectly into Christian ethics. Like white supremacy is so interwoven and intertwined into the concept of white supremacy, world domination, empire, colonization. A lot of these ideas were propagated and spread through what was called Christianity. The idea that the white man was supreme, like they pulled that out of the Bible. It's a mistranslation, a misinterpretation of what the Bible actually said, certainly. But they felt like they had theological foundations for saying, oh, we are Saxons, so we are more pure, we are more important, we have the right to subjugate the earth, subjugate other peoples, that these peoples are actually not whole peoples, they don't have souls, therefore can be slaves and servants, and they are just extensions of this earth which we dominate. Right. You know, it's Indian theology. And for me, seeing that connection, seeing the way Christianity, and like I don't actually call it Christianity, you know what I mean? It has nothing to do with Christ. This is empire that converted. This is like, you know, they often say that the emperor converted to Christianity. Like, I don't believe that that's true, you know. when you actually look at the historical facts, it's that Christianity converted into empire, you know?
Mm.
Christianity as an ideology converted into this thing called empire and was taken and weaponized by empire and turned into this weapon that then went all around the world. You know, you literally can, like, no part of the world has been safe from this weapon of colonization, of empire. Very few what are they called, the peoples who have been what are they called? Like the peoples who are still like untouched by the
Oh,
rest of
okay.
the world.
Right. Sort of indigenous people who have not connected
Yeah,
with the rest of the world, who maintain their, yeah,
there's a term for it. But like, imagine if we had more of that in the world, if more of
right,
us has access to our indigenous traditions and cultures. But
right.
instead out here like all a hot mess, and it's really a product of this Christian empire, this colonization process, that told certain peoples that we were bad, that we weren't
Mm.
beautiful, we had these features that made us less human, that
Yes.
we had, we didn't have souls, and therefore we could be made into submissives. And I
And
I
just
just
to clarify for our listeners, you're not talking about Christianity itself as being inherently what you're
talking about,
describing, because I know that people will hear this and not hear what you're actually saying. So
yeah,
can
and
we let's
that's my
make
whole
that let's make that distinction, so
yeah.
that people are really clear.
Yeah, I am not talking about Christianity in its core as the teachings of Christ. I am a
Right.
follower of Christ. I
That's
love
right.
Christ.
That's
I
right.
believe in Christ. That is not what I'm speaking of. I'm speaking of the weaponization process that was put upon a certain theological understanding that told some people that they were better than other people, that
Right.
told some people that they could dominate other people, kill other people, take over other people's land, oppress people, enslave people, hurt people. I mean, like, kill people, lynch people, like, and that moves further on into the idea that the earth is also subject to
Right.
these people's domination. And like, whenever somebody is like, oh, haha, I'm so much better than that other person, like, there is an element of that inside of that. And whew,
Mm.
yeah, I'm not talking about white people. I'm not talking about Christianity. I am talking about systems
That's right.
and ideologies and theologies that tell some people that they're better than others, that tell some people that they have more of a right to live than other people, that tell some people that they are the cream of the crop, that they get to be out here on the earth doing whatever they want. And that's just not real. That is not real.
Right.
No matter who you ask, where you come from, like, it's funny, like, we could even talk about Islam. Like, that is the reason I studied Christian ethics specifically. As an American, as a Muslim American, daughter of immigrants in this country, I just felt like I had to understand the foundations of what this was. And I read this incredible book that just shook my whole world and changed my whole life. It's called Stand Your Ground by Kelly Brown Douglas. This incredible book about it weaves Trayvon Martin's story into the story of the founding fathers, and how
Mm.
story led to this story, and it's a brilliant piece of work. But the reason I went and studied Christian ethics, and specifically studied at Union Theological Seminary, was because of a man named um, uh, James Cone.
Mm.
He just passed away. He's the
Mm-hmm.
father of Black liberation theology. I was so blessed to be able to study with him, and he is the reason I made the choice to study at Union. There were other reasons, but as soon as I heard him speak and I read his work, I was like, "Khalas, that's it. This is for me," because in Black liberation theology, just like in womanism, there is a reorienting, a reclaiming, a reinterpretation, a coming to understand that our voices and our stories must be the primary source, one of the primary sources that we pull from. Right? Just like white supremacy has done. Their own experience to say, well, this is what's beautiful, this is what's good, this is what's important. And they have said that theirs is the standard, right? So like a certain shaped nose, a certain kind of mouth, a certain bone structure, a certain kind of hair, like that is what's beautiful. That is what is, deemed like the most human. And everything else is less than, and we have to do the work of saying, well, no, my grandmother's hands, my grandmother's nose, my grandfather's hair, like those are the stories that I know. Those are the beautiful features that I know and value, and those are the standard for me. And that's where that is my primary source to tell my stories from. That is my primary source that I'm pulling from. And for me, it just radically changed my life to witness that level of authority. That, Black people in America have done the hard work of coming to a newfound authority of self, a newfound, like you could even call it indigeneity, that like I am of this earth and you can't tell me I'm not.
Right.
We both know Ebony Janice. And
right. See, that's who I was thinking of right now when you said, that self-authority, because that is what she teaches.
Yes. And I love it when she talks about herself being like Black mixed with Black and nothing but Black. Because the world will have you believing that they get to tell you what you are. And as soon as you say, no, I get to define myself. I get to say with authority who I am. You don't get to tell me that I'm, mixed or whatever, that I'm not pure blood, that I'm this and that I'm that. As soon as you say for yourself and own that authority and speak from, like, I learned so much, and I owe so much to the Black community, just as a Muslim, let alone somebody who studied Black liberation theology, but just as a Muslim in this country, I owe so much to the Black community, being that, like, they have done this hard work of reimagining what it is to be alive in this world, you know, and struggling and fighting the fight against white supremacy and oppression, and doing it with joy, and doing it like through like incredible imagination of what is possible in the world.
Right.
Yeah, so like,
and that's such an important point that you're making, because under white supremacy, you are marginalized at the intersections of race and your religion as well, and the experiences that Black Muslims are facing in America are different from white Muslims and Muslims who either pass as white or who are light-skinned, right? And that's Absolutely. A conversation that I know is often difficult to have, because that proximity to whiteness, white supremacy just seeks to reassert itself again and again and again. Black Muslims are often not the ones who are seen front and center, who are the most marginalized, who have to do the most work and get the least credit for it.
Absolutely.
And still have to deal with colorism and racism from white people and from non-Black people of color as well.
Absolutely, especially from the immigrant Muslim community. There's this sense that, like, we just get to break into this society and be Muslim, and like, how come how come they don't accept us and how come they don't love us? Like, can you look around and take a minute to understand that, like, like, okay, people want to say, like, okay, this isn't the oppression Olympics or whatever, but take a look around. Like,
Right.
you are not Indigenous American. You are not Native American. You are not Black American. Like, you need to shut up and sit down and take a moment and learn something. Study what made these people so beautiful, what makes Black culture be like the dominant culture of the world right now. Like, think about hip hop culture and how it's like, at this point becoming mainstream. Like, why is that true? Because it comes from an authentic place of um self self reflection, self
Mm. Determination.
determination.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And like, you don't get that without hard work. And you think you're just gonna show up in this country and just be like whatever. No, like, come on, immigrant Muslim community, like, wake up. Like,
Hmm.
give credit where credit is due, and work alongside your sisters and brothers in this struggle. And don't just expect everybody to fall down and worship you as soon as you start doing that work.
Right. Right.
People just want to be celebrated as soon as they start doing the work. And it's just like, no, no, no. Like, you can spend your whole life and nobody's ever going to throw you a party. Like,
Right.
people were saying, like, do you want a cookie? Like,
Right.
there are no cookies,
Right.
you have to do the work and shut up. And truly, 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 like, we will come to a place, I believe it in the depths of my heart, that we will come to a place when these are the conversations of the past, because we have done the hard work,
Mm.
and we have laid out our hearts on the line, and our pride and our egos on the line, and said that, truly, God did not create us superior, white over black, black over white. Like,
That's right.
God created us equal, and we must do the hard work of realizing that in this world as well. It's not something that is just going to come in the hereafter.
That's
That
right.
is what we do here and now. And often people are like, well, that's what the akhirah is for. That's what the next life and the hereafter is for. That's when paradise is. No, I'm sorry to break it to you. We have to cultivate and create that paradise right here, right now. Not saying that it doesn't exist somewhere else, but saying that that work is important right now. And you
Right.
can't wait for the next life. You
No.
can't wait for the next life for equality and justice. I can't wait for the next life for equality and justice. I will be on the front line struggling with my sisters and brothers every step of the way, because that is the right thing to do. And my religion tells me that, my
That's
heart
right.
tells me that,
Yeah.
my soul calls me to that. um and it's not a black struggle, it's not a white struggle, it's not an indigenous struggle. It's a part of the earth struggle,
Yeah.
that we are beings of this earth, here for a short time, and we're meant to arrive at this recognition and realization that we are connected. And I found that quote, and I did want to share it with you.
Mm. Please do.
It says, it's from Sheikh Ahmadu Bamba, who was a revolutionary. He said, cultivate inner beauty and you will attain external beauty without artifice. And like that, for me, this whole conversation segues into that, because when you are in the work of the revolution on the inside,
Yeah.
your world becomes the revolution.
That's
You
right.
know,
Yeah.
you you become a revolutionary no matter where you go, no matter what you do. And it's from a place of authenticity, from a
Right.
place of purity.
It
You
spills out.
represent
It spills out of you.
the beauty, the
Yeah.
beauty you are, that you're cultivating on the inside, becomes everything that you do, from
Right.
the food you make and that you feed your family and your loved ones, to the work that you do out in the world, to the way you are with your parents, like, all of that, from the very mundane to the very grand scale, like, all of it, when you are cultivating that inner work, the outer work, it just falls into place.
Yeah.
Everything is touched by it.
Thank you so much. That is something that I believe strongly, but I really appreciate you for sharing that quote, because it just says it in this way that sinks even deeper for me. So I really appreciate that. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
And I can see that that is how you live your life as well, because I know, like we said earlier in this conversation, that doing the work that you're doing and showing up, regardless of marginalization and discrimination and racism, outside of that, being a creative person and saying, I'm going to create this thing that doesn't exist and I'm going to birth it and put it out into the world. Like every time you release a song, I know it's like, how is it going to be received, right? What are people going to say, right? Like that's just part of the creative process. Like I'm, a few months away from my book being out in the world, and I'm like excited. Yes, I'm excited, but I'm also like, please don't look at me, anybody. You know what I mean? So just doing that is quite a journey in and of itself. And then when you add in our intersections of identities, it just adds all of these different layers. But I see you doing your work, and the way that you be comes from this place, because there is if you have a sense of discernment and you are somebody who is on the path yourself of doing that inner work, you recognize it when you see it in somebody else. It's not necessarily something that they're doing or shouting about. It's just the way that they're showing up, which is radiating from the inside out. And so I see you moving through your journey with this grace that is beautiful, but it's also really human. You get frustrated, you get pissed off, like you're like, what the fuck? Like you have all of that as well. You're a human being, right? Yeah. And you don't stay there. You don't live there in that place, right? You allow yourself, this is how I experience it, you allow yourself to have that experience, but you don't then stay there and build your art just from that place. You are really focused, it seems to me, on what the bigger thing is that is calling you forward, and it is love, is what it looks like to me.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, Layla, thank you for saying all that. Like, I cringe. I cringe, and it's funny. I'll tell you a little story. I was in a Uber, Lyft, or whatever it was, on my way to the airport recently, and my driver was talking to me, and she was really sweet. I was so tired though, like starting an early day where I knew I was traveling all day, and this girl's like talking to me. Oh, you're my first ride, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she gets into it. It turns out she's a pole dance teacher. And she's like, oh, you should come to my class. And I'm like sitting in the back seat in my hijab. And I'm just like, girl, right now. I was like, well, do you have all women's classes? And she's like, no, not yet. But, like whatever, we'll figure it out. And I was just like, well, okay, cool. And at that point I was just like, okay, like bless her heart. Like she's trying. Anyway, we got to talking, and she had said that she had this experience where, a few years ago, she had this spiritual awakening where she suddenly was able to like read people's energy and, connect with the spirit realm and whatever. And I was feeling snarky at that point because she had just like told me to come to her pole dancing class. And I was like, well, go ahead and read me. Feeling like, okay, go ahead. Like,
yeah.
Go ahead. And she started to close her eyes, and she's driving.
Oh my God.
Oh, I shouldn't do that. And I was like, yeah, please don't close your eyes. She's like, oh, I've never done a scan before without closing my eyes. So she's like, this is going to be interesting. So she starts talking. And she's like, oh, I see your solar plexus is really bright and open and this and that. And then she goes, but your throat chakra. She's like, it's weird because I had told her that I was a performance artist. She's like, it's weird that as a performance artist, your throat chakra would be close, especially since you use your voice. She's like, your throat chakra feels blocked and, locked up. And she's like, and I feel like one of the things about you is that you can't allow people to truly see you like fully, and that you can't take a compliment. I died, Layla. I died. Oh my God!
She read you.
Witch, what are you doing?
You're like, get out, finish the scan.
Are we almost at the airport? I haven't had enough of this scan. And she kept going, and she was just telling me all of these like wildly relevant things. But when she said all of that, and she was like, it seems like you're not speaking your full truth, and you're not telling the whole story and the whole picture. And it's because, like you see the best of me. Like, you are a beautiful person who's on her journey, who sees the best in people because you're doing your work. You know what I mean? And I can't, like, I feel like we're in similar situations where, like, you can't see that about yourself.
Right.
I can't see that about myself.
Right.
Well, oh, like, you're so complex and you do all these things and you hold it all so well, and you're a mom and you do this and that. And I'm just like, well, you don't know what kind of shit hypocrite I actually am.
Right.
Like, you have no idea. Like, actually, I'm garbage. Actually, I write pages and pages and pages of lyrics, and I get 4 lines. I'm actually a garbage writer.
Right.
You have
That's
no idea.
the dialogue in our minds.
Yeah, exactly. And I just really honor you for being on the path to, like, owning all of it. And, like, I see you out here with your, like, I don't know, we talked about the priority list. And
yes.
You out here, like, really doing the work to internalize, like, what's important, what am I doing, what can I give, to myself and to the world. And, like, wow, just, like, thank you so much for seeing yourself and seeing others. Like, it's not easy, and it's not sweet all the time, and it's not gentle, and it's not beautiful, and it's ugly sometimes, and it hurts sometimes. Like, yesterday I just had to sit and journal for, I don't know, a good hour before I could go to sleep, because I told you this person wrote to me, and like, sometimes you just get shaken up, and you realize that your work has impact,
right,
and that it helps people, and that for some people it triggers them. And, like, you have to just allow it to be. As a creative person, you just have to, okay, here it is, world. Like, don't shit on me bad. Like,
right.
please.
I don't know why we do it, to be honest with you. Other than something bigger says, this is what you're here to do, because it's not fun. It's for all the compliments and the ways in which others see us. And I shared something recently on Instagram, and I said, your healing will inspire some people and it will trigger others, right? And that's so true. Like, I see you, and all I see is light. All I see is love. All I see is inspiration. All I see is, like, I'm so glad there's someone called Mona Haydar in the world, and then other people see you and, like, that bitch, they're just like, she's a fake, she's a this, she's a that, she doesn't represent us, she's, and I get that a lot as well, right? And what I have learned is that I reached a rock bottom point this year, and I had to make a choice about, knowing that it's going to be this and more of this. Like, this won't go away. These experiences, these kind of really harsh, heartbreaking, harmful, violent, abusive experiences, they'll actually get worse the bigger you get. You'll actually receive more of this kind of stuff. So are you going to say...
But the highs get higher too.
Exactly, right? So I had to make a conscious choice to say yes. And that came from, I have to say yes, because I've done so many things and nothing has felt more right than this. Right? And so I can't imagine you saying, do you know what? Like, rapping and being a performance artist and being this person in the world's too hard. I'm going to just go and be, I don't know, something else. I don't know what, right? And I don't know. But because it's so clearly that this is what, it's so clear this is where you're meant to be and what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, I laugh about the fact that I'm a rapper. Like, that shit is funny to me. Like, oh yeah, I like grew up thinking that my little hijabi Arab girl self from Flint, Michigan was gonna grow up and like rap. No, that isn't what I thought. I couldn't even imagine that in my wildest dreams because I had never seen that before.
Right.
6, 7-year-old Mona had only ever seen like the Arab girl on the TV as the like nose job, you know, bleached blonde hair, like the Lebanese chick on the TV who was Miss Lebanon, whatever, 1997. Like,
right.
That's the only acceptable form of like Arab person in media, Arab woman in media. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Someone who was trying so hard not to be Arab, somebody who was trying so hard not to look like her people. And I couldn't even imagine it. And so for me to be here and like being who I am, yeah, I mean, it takes a level of foolishness. I'll tell you that for free. You have to be some kind of foolish to be doing what I'm doing, because people hate you for it.
Right.
And, you know, I am a non-Black, light-skinned Arab woman who grew up in Flint, Michigan, who was born in Saudi Arabia, who's Syrian.
Yeah. How many boxes are we checking off here for, you know?
Hijab,
right.
A mother.
Right.
You know, like doing hip hop. And
right.
so many people, like,
your box just gets smaller and smaller as you know, say these identities of how much space people expect you to take up.
You're allowed to take up, exactly. And people are just like, you do not belong. You know, you don't belong in this space. You don't deserve any of this space. Hip hop is not for you. You know, take off your hijab. You're doing a disservice to all Muslims, you know. And I'm just out here like, you know what? Like you focus on your relationship with your creator.
Right.
And let me focus on mine and my journey and my purpose. Like I'm about to cry right now, but like literally I would have loved to choose an easier life for myself, for my children. Like I would have loved to have been a non-public person, you know, and I never once asked for a microphone or asked for a platform or asked for a stage, but like, this is my life. This is what my life has been since I was 14 years old. And, you know, everybody's like, come to the open mic and perform. And I have these butterflies and I know that this is where I'm supposed to be, even though I suck at it, you know, even though I'm terrible at this thing called spoken word. I know I'm supposed to be here. I know this is my place, you know, and like, God help me, because God help all of us and be gentle with us, because like, it's not easy out here putting your heart out there for the world, producing something that comes straight from a very vulnerable place where you're talking about, you know, things that are bigger than yourself and things that are about community, things that are, you know, like people will just tear you apart and tear you to shreds because you're out
just
here
like that, right?
Yeah.
And you like pulled from your guts, right, to like put this thing out into the world, and just like that.
Have you heard Princess Nokia's new song?
No, I haven't. No.
It's called Sugar Honey Iced Tea.
Yeah.
And it goes, sugar honey iced tea. These bitches won't fight me. And she says in the song, I'm not remembering the exact lyric, but she says something in the song about like, what, you know, like you want to talk about what I'm doing, like what have you done?
Right.
You know, like go do something. And I'm not talking about Twitter.
Right.
I'm talking about being an Instagram model and selling people garbage on Instagram. Like, that is make your living. Do what you got to do to survive. But also go out here and do something with your life that is serving your soul.
Right.
That is elevating your soul and making your life something that when you die, you didn't sell people jeans.
Right.
You know, like you did something for the world. You know, like you gave your heart to the world.
Right.
You gave your heart and your best, and you did everything that you could do, and you left nothing inside of you that you could give.
Right.
And
I was going to say, when you live from that place, and that can be so individual what that looks like. You know, there's no prescribed path, but what that looks like, each one of us are so different. But what I have found for myself, at least, is that when you live from that place, you can't shit on other people who you can't, like, when you see somebody and they're trying and they're
yes.
They're on their journey. Okay, they're going to mess up and make mistakes or whatever, but because you're like, I'm out here doing the same thing, I know what it's like. You don't have time, first of all, right? You don't have time. You're not checking for everybody else, right? You don't have time. And then you have this compassion because you see a fellow traveler on the path, and you know what it's like to put yourself out there in a way that is completely out of your comfort zone, in a way that feels totally vulnerable, and in a way that really, like you said, can be of service to other people. You can't shit on people when you see them trying,
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. I love this conversation so much, Mona. We've talked about so many different things, and I just feel very blessed by this conversation. To close up our conversation, what does it mean to you to be a good ancestor?
Whew. I think being a good ancestor means that you left nothing inside of your being that you could potentially give to make this world more beautiful and better. We're in the midst of this climate crisis conversation, the climate catastrophe conversation, and like the apocalypse feels near. It feels close. It feels like, I know every generation was like, oh, the Antichrist is coming and blah blah, but like knowing that the earth is heating up, and seeing physical changes in the planet, that is real, and we can feel it, and there's this like collective feeling of angst that like we don't have time to waste, and like we have the most options in the world now for time wasting. There have never been more options for how to
That's right. That's right.
I just feel like pour out all your love, and that's how you be a good ancestor. Pour out every toolkit that you can possibly dream up. Pour out every imaginable possibility for, like, I'm really inspired by sci-fi and fantasy work. I read so much of it, and like a lot of our technology is born from sci-fi. Like,
that's right.
Like, it's so, like, even just an iPad and something like that. Like somebody had this crazy idea and wrote about it, and then somebody was like, "Hey, maybe I can make that."
Right? Why can't that be a thing? Right.
Right. Like, so maybe we just need to write all of the things, and imagine all of the worlds in which there is love and there is peace and there is beauty in abundance in this world, and that there is no child that dies of hunger. There is no mother that feels alone, because for a lack of community, for a society that doesn't understand that, young mothers or old mothers or whoever mothers need community, need society, need a tribe to hold them and keep them through that experience. like being a good ancestor for me is all of that, all just like pouring out everything you possibly can and imagining the world better,
Yeah.
making it with your life, with your prayers, with your works, with your being, with your just life, your entire life, with your breath.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Thank you, Mona. Thank you. Is what's really going to stay with me from what you've said is about, how everything feels so present right now. And I think when we use the word ancestor, we often think about like in the past, like living a long life, but we don't know what's happening right now, right? And we're at a time where we have to see ourselves as living ancestors right now. That what we do matters so much, not just because it's going to inspire someone who reads or listens to something that we create, though that, too, but because the actions that we're taking right now affect the very next generation in a massive way. And so it's so important. So I really appreciate what you've shared there. Thank you.
You know, like it just strikes me from what you said that every moment, every breath that we take, every part of our life, the mundane, like just making breakfast and
Mm-hmm.
having coffee and like kissing your loved ones, um, all of that, like nothingness, even that is weighty and heavy
Mm.
and big, because if you're pouring from your deepest love for that, that becomes the revolution,
Yeah.
and just energetically, like you're pushing forth the revolution with your very being. We all are.
Yeah.
When we give our greatest love at every moment, at every possible moment that we can, it just strikes me that like every moment is making this world or breaking it,
Yeah.
moment, Yeah. Thank you for saying that. You just sparked that in me.
Thank you. I hope that this episode has helped you gain new insights and find deeper answers to what being a good ancestor means to you. We'd love to hear what some of your aha moments have been from this conversation. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at Good Ancestor Podcast and drop us a comment to let us know what some of your biggest takeaways have been. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being a good ancestor.